joining us today, Kathy.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
This is really interesting. I loved the book, and congratulations on it. It's Say What? How to Communicate Anything to Anyone. And my first question to you is really, why do you think we have such a difficult time communicating effectively?
That's a great question, and that's what sparked the whole thing of the book. I don't think we're taught to communicate well. Unless you seek out like nonviolent communication or you're in a communications course in college, that's not something we're taught. And I didn't use algebra at all today. I did have to communicate with people, and no one taught me how to do that. I also think the second part of that is often we think we're such great communicators, or it's always everybody else. And at some point, we have to realize we can't change other people. Oh, if we could, it would be so great.
Wouldn't it?
We can only change and advance and evolve ourselves. So I think it's a matter of working on ourselves to make sure we are getting our message across, and communication can break down at any level of that communication cycle. So I think it's just, it's that we're not taught to. It's not necessarily intuitive, and we think we're great, and we're not always great.
I would agree with that. I like it that we think better of ourselves than maybe we actually are. I mean, I think that's good for our motivation, but not if we're blind to it. I think that that is a really important point. Um,
Exactly.
Another interesting thing I found in the book, or that I really sort of resonated with, is that you say that we're never not communicating. And that was a little bit of a different perspective on communicating. So I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of our communication is nonverbal, right? So even if we're just standing in silence, we're communicating something. Maybe it's how we're standing, maybe it's the look, maybe it's what, at least for me, and I think I mentioned this book, I don't know what this is doing most of the time. My face just sort of gives, I do not have a good poker face unless I'm really conscious of trying to have a good poker face. So it's just like, not making a choice is making a choice. Same thing with communication. Us not saying anything is saying sometimes volumes. So I think we have to remember that just because we're sitting in silence, that's actually communicating something too. Maybe it's misinterpreted, and we have to recognize that that's still communication. So I think that's where that went with that.
Yeah, I think part of why it caught my attention is because I know for us, I'm sure for many, now that we're communicating almost every day in Zoom or some platform, you really notice more now that people's expressions, because we've lost
Yep.
the other part of the communication system, which is our entire bodies.
Yep.
And it amazes me that people are not aware of what they're communicating by the way they're looking, say in a workshop. In a live workshop, if someone looks bored somewhere in the audience, you don't
Right.
really notice it. But when you've got, people right there in their little box, it's
Right.
quite evident. And I do think that people are maybe less aware of what they're communicating, even by just their facial expressions, which are now critical, I think, because of the way
Yeah.
we're having to communicate. So,
Well, and to that point, if you don't know what your face is doing, Zoom is the perfect opportunity to do that, because right now, we're doing this thing. So I'm looking in the camera, but I can always look down at myself and go, oh, okay, I'm making that face again. And I have to admit, as a speaker, I do a lot of, the last year has been a lot of Zoom presentations for me. I teach meditation, and I have people close their eyes and do things. And I will scroll through all the faces to see who's paying attention and who's not. So don't think you're getting away with something. I'm looking to see if you're participating.
oh, great. Um, One of the things you touch on in the book is how we jump to conclusions, which in my trainings, I say we make up stories all the time. But I'm wondering if you can describe the impact this has on our communication.
Sure, if we don't know what the other person is actually doing, thinking, feeling, trying to communicate, and we interpret that in a different way, if we make up those stories. And I love Eckhart Tolle, and Eckhart Tolle says, it's not the circumstance that makes us unhappy, it's our narrative around that circumstance. It's how we interpret that stuff. So it's the same way. If I pass you in the parking lot and I wave and you don't wave back, and I create this whole story about how you don't like me and you're ignoring me and you're being mean and what did I do wrong, and I have this whole huge reaction to that, and reactivity is horrible for communication. And then I call you and I yell at you, or the next time I see you I ignore you, and it becomes this whole thing when really maybe you weren't wearing your glasses and didn't see me. So I said, what do I know to be true? What do I know? You didn't wave back. Period. That's all I know. I can create story after story around that. that's not probably what actually happened. And this is where I love asking questions. I encourage people to ask for clarification. Maybe I text you and go, hey, I saw you in the parking lot the other day. I waved. You didn't wave back. Did you not see? Ask the question, hey, did you see me? As opposed to jumping to conclusions. If we burned calories jumping to conclusions, we would all be at the exact weight that we wanted to be. It's hard for our brain not to make up stories. That's what it does.
Yeah.
So it can be really detrimental to relationships, to communication, to leadership, to getting projects done on time if we don't actually know what the other person's intention is. So clarify, clarify, clarify.
So true. Um, the you teach mindfulness, and obviously we have a big focus on mindfulness. And in the book, you talk about two areas that are in alignment with what we really focus on in the podcast, which is presence and mindfulness in communication. And so I was wondering if you could expound on that a little bit for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're in a stressed state, we don't communicate well. We become very reactive. We tend to see everything through a cloudy lens. So it's like your windshield wipers don't quite work, and you're trying to see everything around this smear of negativity is how that affects us. We tend to hear things more negatively valenced. You tend to misinterpret facial expressions. So we start to tell those stories in our head when we're stressed. Now, in defense of our brain, it's made to do that. It's made to look for negative things that are going to be a threat. And once it starts, it goes, goes, goes. That's going to affect our communication because we're going to be reactive. We're going to be misinterpreting things. We're going to be letting our brain run rampant and tell those stories about things that we don't know to be true. So if we stop and just take that pause for a moment, do that breath or that mindfulness practice or that meditation, whatever gets you back to that neutral pause, then you have the ability to actually make that decision as to whether you're going to react, which tends to get us in trouble, or respond, which is a more mindful, thought out, what do I really want to say? What is my intention in saying that? I've actually started asking people that. It's like, why are you telling me that story? Like, what do I need to get from that? And sometimes we just ramble on. We don't even know. We're mindlessly talking about something, or not understanding that the other person would like to say something, or it's now their turn to talk. If we're not present in that communication, it's not going to be as good a communication. It's going to kind of fall to the wayside. So anything you can do to be more present, be more mindful. I love gazing. I teach gazing when I do my mindfulness class. It's one of my favorite things, going back again to Eckhart Tolle, one of my favorite things to do. And it helps conversation. It helps all the communication, relationships, leadership, again, all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So since we're on the topic of mindfulness and meditation, we've been covering just in the last few weeks on the podcast. Of course, what we focus on usually is mindfulness meditation, but we've been trying to highlight different types of meditation because, as you mentioned in the book, and I agree, whatever kind of meditation you do, it's going to be beneficial. So, we want to help people find the type that might resonate better for them. Maybe if it's not mindfulness, I mean, it doesn't matter what kind it is, it's finding it. And so I was wondering if you have a preferred practice or a favorite practice that you feel that you get the most benefit from that you could share.
Absolutely. It's my favorite thing. So I was a horrible meditator. Everybody always told me I should meditate. Don't say should. That's in the book. We shouldn't say should. We're shooting all over ourselves. We can't do that. So I had these misconceptions that you had to touch certain fingers. I never knew which one. You had to roll your eyes back. You had to sit still. If it itched, you couldn't scratch it. If it cramped, too bad. And then you floated away into a million bubbles, which never happened for me. And no one ever told me the benefit of meditation or how to meditate or why to meditate. And again, it goes down to if we have full information, we're going to be more apt to agree to do that thing. So when I went to Harvard, they taught us the mini meditation. It's my I love it. I love teaching it. I probably taught it to a million people at this point. Can I walk you through it? It just takes a couple minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I invite everyone to close their eyes. And it doesn't matter what physical position you're in. You can stay sitting at your desk, sitting in your car. Don't close your eyes if you're in your car. Don't do that. And I just want you to concentrate on your breath. And you're not trying to change it. You're not trying to slow it down. You're not trying to speed it up. You're just noticing what it's doing. And on your next inhale, think, I am. And on all of your inhales, think, I am. And on your next exhale, think, at peace. And on all of your exhales, think at peace. Inhale, I am. Exhale at peace. And when other thoughts intrude, which they inevitably will, just dismiss them without judgment. No need to latch on to those. Let them float away like clouds on a summer day. And just return to the breath and the I am at peace. And you can unclench your hands and you can let your shoulders drop and you can relax your belly because no one's looking. And when those thoughts run in, just acknowledge your thinking and let them go. They float away. I am at peace. And go ahead and take another inhale, I am, exhale at peace, and open your eyes and come back to the room.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's so easy and you can do it anywhere. In fact, while we were getting on, I was doing a couple I am at peace because it stops the stress response and the stress response keeps us from being at our best. It keeps us from having higher brain function and good cognitive skills, good communication, empathy, that sort of thing. So anytime you can do this, and I made the joke about, don't do it in the car. I actually do it in the car all the time. Being that I'm from the East Coast, now I'm in Santa Barbara, a little bit slower, a little bit more distracted. If I see that light turn yellow and I think, yay, I get to go, and the guy in front of me slams on the brakes, I can't get out and move the guy. They frown on that. That's not a good thing to do. So why am I going to stress myself out? Why am I going to put myself into a fight or flight response over something that doesn't deserve that? So I take my hand off the steering wheel, I stare up at the light, and I do the breathing and the I am at peace until the light changes, and then I go on my way. So it's like any time you have just a few minutes, a few moments to take that opportunity to meditate, to be present, to be mindful, it's only going to benefit you. It's only going to be a positive thing.
I agree. And I also think, and I appreciate that you did that little like demonstration, the little short mini meditation, because what I have found, and we're doing it now in all of our trainings, because to tell someone it makes a difference doesn't work. Like they have to experience, and we actually have them check in with themselves before we start. Like, how are you feeling? And almost everybody's stressed these days. And then just a few minutes of breathing exercises,
Mm.
meditating, calming down, getting present. And afterwards, then always we get, oh, thank you so much for doing that. And it's just hard to it's challenging sometimes to express to people you can do this anytime, anywhere. You don't have to wait till you're in a formal training and do
Right.
it with us. But
Right.
until they experience, I don't think people realize just how powerful the breath is and just how powerful it is to be in the present moment instead of worrying about what happened a few minutes ago or a year ago, or worrying about what's going to happen in the future. So I do
Yeah.
appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Well, and to that point, I had a coaching client the other day. She was like, they say to meditate in the morning, and I can't meditate in the morning because my brain wants to go. And I said, okay, who are they?
Yeah.
And my rule for meditation is there are no rules to meditation. Now, people who do very formal seated meditation are going to disagree with me. That's totally cool. I now, because of the mini meditation, that became my gateway drug to formal seated meditation. I can sit on the pillow and I know which fingers to touch and I can float away in a million bubbles. I know how to do that now. I don't have time to do that every day. I do have time when I'm sitting in traffic or when I'm in the shower or when I'm cooking breakfast to do the mini, as long as I'm doing something. It's like I'd rather do 5 minutes of crunches than nothing. I'd love to be in an hour exercise class. I don't have time today. Let's do 5 minutes of crunches. So, it's take what you can, adapt it to you. It's that adaptability thing and personalize it, make it whatever works for you.
Yeah, that's great. And I do agree with that. And of course, that's the first form of resistance we get all the time is I don't have time. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you're breathing already. So it's really just pay attention to the breathing. It's like it doesn't really have to take any extra time when you're too busy. I agree with you though. I like sitting in meditation when I have the luxury of the time.
Yeah.
And I frequently don't have the time either. So along those lines, I might as well ask you now. I was going to ask you in a minute, but since we're on this topic, one of the things we really try to express to all of our listeners, because it kind of speaks back to what you were saying about formal meditation. So they think it's this big thing they have to learn and follow every step and all of that. And so what I really try to get through with every guest is first of all, the other misperception is that somehow those of us that meditate never experience stress, which is not true. And so what I like to ask all guests is, if you are in a situation where you feel your stress rising, I do think that if you meditate, you're much more aware of the minute
Hmm.
stress starts. And you're not in a position, like maybe you're in a meeting with a boss, or we have a lot of hospital workers that listen to the program, and they're with a patient or whatever it is,
Hmm.
and they can't even stop to do a mini meditation. Do you have a go-to? Like, what do you do in that case that just helps you, again, stop the sympathetic system from kicking in, and maybe flip over to the parasympathetic system? Do you have a go-to that you use, like, on a regular basis, or your favorite?
Yeah, there's two things that I do. To me, the pause is the greatest thing ever. And I take that pause simply by concentrating on my breath for a second. And like you said, we're breathing anyway, so just make it conscious. There are people that have approached me after my talks and said, I can't think about my breath. It freaks me out. It makes me have anxiety. So that's not uncommon. Or if you don't have time to think about your breath, or that doesn't resonate with you, whatever. If you rub your fingertips together lightly with such a tension, you can feel the ridges on your fingers. It kind of does the same thing. It brings you back to that moment, to your body. It keeps you from being out there, and all the stress is out there, right? It's that thing we're worried about in the future, that stuff we're dragging around from the past. Right now in this present moment, everything's okay. So whether it's the breathing or the rubbing of the fingers together, and I have clients who have gotten these necklaces that are almost little, not pomanders, but some like little aromatherapy things, and they can just sit and kind of fiddle with their necklace, and the scent comes up and reminds them. So they've anchored in that scent of lavender, vanilla, eucalyptus, whatever, to trigger them to relax. So that's a great thing to do too. Is again, customize it. Maybe it's every time you see red, you're reminded to take a deep breath. There are so many things we can do in our environment, and that's all in our control. That's all, we're in charge of that. So customize it.
That's fantastic. No, I love that idea. I'm an EFT practitioner, and so I frequently tell people to rub the sides of their fingers, because
Oh.
those are acupuncture points,
Hmm.
or meridian points. So, but I love that. I haven't heard that before, so I'll have to try that too. Rubbing just the tips lightly. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so let's get back to the book. Um, you mentioned the five whys. So, what are the five whys?
I love the five whys. I don't even remember where I learned this. We go to all these workshops and read things, and we it's like a giant buffet to me. You just pull off everything that works for you. So the concept of the five whys is like, so often we'll say, hey, I want this thing. And we think that's what we want. Especially I get this all out when we're doing affirmations. And that's sort of the story that I share with this in the book. Is a woman came up to me after one of my talks and she said, what do you do if someone's affirming things that can't happen? And I said, okay, I need the example of that one. She said, well, I have a client who's affirming that he's going to win the lottery. And I said, let me guess, he's never bought a ticket. She goes, no, he's never bought a ticket. So clearly he can't win the lottery. That doesn't work that way. And I said, okay, well, what does he want? She said, he wants to win the lottery. I said, no, that's not what he wants. What does he want? Oh, well, he wants a lot of money. I said, okay, why does he want a lot of money? Well, he wants to start a foundation for youth because he was incarcerated young, and he wants to, do this for kids. And the only way he could do that was with a lot of money. And I said, okay, so he doesn't want to win the lottery. She said, what? No, that's what he wants. And I said, no, he wants to help people. So when you ask those whys, it distills it down to, what do you really want? Same thing with, I'm terrified of public speaking. Why? What if people laugh at me? What if they laugh? Well, what if they laugh at you? Well, then I'll be humiliated. And then what then? It's distilling it down to, what is the root cause analysis is what that is. They use the big examples with the Jefferson Memorial in DC, where it's a longer story, but the engineer, rather than just replacing all the marble and concrete, had the sense to ask why it was degrading faster than any other monument. And it turned out because they had lights on. They left lights on. No one considered that. So it's asking those whys to get to what you want. And that comes with asking questions. That comes with being curious. And that's, the first thing we learn in coaching training is be curious about how that works and why, and asking those questions. I have a friend who's a hypnotherapist who does not like to ask why. He said, why seems accusatory. Well, okay, you can take, in certain situations, I can see how that would be. But to me, asking those five whys and really distilling down what you want or what you're trying to communicate, that's the key to this. Because if you don't know what you want, you can't get it. You can't ask for it. You don't say, go get me a shirt. What shirt? Like, for who? What's your budget? What store am I going to? Distill it down. Detail, 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 detail,
So true. And that does lead to the other question I was going to ask you, which is about affirmations. We also teach affirmations in our workshops. And so if someone really desires something and they want to use an affirmation because now they've heard about it, can you describe to our audience the power of affirmations or why they're important and how to best use them? So obviously we start with why. Why do we want something? But then what's the next step?
Yeah, so you've determined what you want. You want to be able to help people, or you want a new car, and it's totally fine to want a new car. I'm all about, if you want things, that's totally fine. Ask yourself why you want that thing. And then if you decide it's for a good reason, ask for the thing. I think we all deserve prosperity and abundance. And if you want to spend it on a new Tesla, knock yourself out. Doesn't matter to me. Uh, for affirmations, you want to put them present. You want to make them short and positive. So I am prosperous and abundant, not someday I'll not be broke. That doesn't work at all. I am prosperous and abundant. I am healthy and well. My immune system is strong. Studies support that we can actually boost our immune system and change our physiology by doing affirmations. So, by me saying my immune system is strong and resilient, I can actually boost my immune system. That's just what the studies show. Most studies with affirmations have been done with either things like wound healing, or sports performance, because those are measurable things. So that's pretty cool. The brain does not recognize the difference between what we're thinking about and imagining and what is actually happening. So as you're visualizing and as you're affirming these things, if you can bring in all of your senses, like get so excited about that new car, and you can get that new car smell. Oh, I can smell that new car thing, and you see what it looks like, and you see what it feels like driving it. And the more real you can make it, the more your brain is going to work on getting you that thing. Your brain wants to take you to stuff that's familiar with it already. This is why so many women unfortunately stay in bad marriages or stay in jobs we don't like. The brain is more comfortable in familiar than moving outside of that to things that are unknown. So make that thing you want known. Visualize, fantasize. Here's the caveat to that. Do it at the right time. Because when I was studying with Dan Brown, the teacher, not the author, he said, stop daydreaming. And I freaked out. I raised my hand in the middle of his talk, and he goes, yes. I don't think he was taking questions. And I said, but no, I can't stop daydreaming. That's like, what am I going to do in the shower? And that's how I get all my good stuff. And he goes, daydreaming and planning the future is great. Are you doing it mindfully, or are you doing it mindlessly? Are you daydreaming right now when you're trying to listen to this? Are you daydreaming while you're making love with your spouse? Are you daydreaming in class when you're supposed to be doing something else? Set 20 minutes aside and daydream, fantasize, do your affirmations. Make it pointed and purposeful. That'll actually make it more effective and efficient too. So whatever you want, dream about it. Your brain will start to move you towards that thing because it thinks it's familiar. So that's my way to do affirmations.
Thank you. I like that you mentioned setting aside time for it because that also ties into creating the habit. So
Yep.
I have a time of day that's what I do. I spend that time visualizing or dreaming about what I want. But it's a it's a ritual and it's
Mm-hmm.
a habit at the same time of day. But oh, it's time for me to I think of it as playing. I start
Ah,
playing with ideas. But I think that's really important because then that is the difference between mindfulness to me and mindless is you're not doing it throughout the day when you need to be focusing on the present and what you're working on, but you're
right.
setting aside that special time for something that is really important to you.
Yeah.
So I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. It's one of my favorite things.
So I guess at least we're getting close to the end here, but I guess I would ask under our conditions, and of course it's different now everywhere, with the shutdowns and the pandemic, and it's different all over the world, and we do have listeners everywhere. So I don't want to
Mhm.
make this a blanket statement, but basically, I'm wondering if you have any tips for this involves both communication and mindfulness. But as we go through this very, let's call it a major transition, we're all in different phases of a transition. Do you have any advice or tips for the best way to listen or hear all of the differing news and differing opinions and all the experts that don't all agree and which is causing a lot of confusion for people, I think, and then they jump to conclusions based on something.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking for, do you have any suggestions for people in how to stay or how to process the information when we don't really know for sure who to listen to or what to do all the time?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I wish I had an easy answer to that. And as much as I love the internet, I hate the internet because you can find anything to support anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's that critical thinking. Again, we're not taught anymore. I've already had to do that 5 or 6 times today. That critical thinking of um, what source is that coming from? I mean, I can find any info I want on Paranoid Joe's blog. Paranoid Joe doesn't actually really have any background in what he's saying to me. He just wants to sell me his latest supplement, his latest whatever. Um, Go to the source, look at multiple sources for things. This has come up a lot because I do massage and like healthcare
Mm.
stuff. People will say, "Hey, I found this website about this supplement. What do you think?" And you realize it's a website trying to sell you the supplement. Well, of course, it's going to give you all the great info about how fabulous it is. It kind of comes down to asking the whys. Like, why are they telling me that? Why are they trying to invoke fear? Why are they trying to get this to happen? Why are they? And I don't care which side of the aisle you're on, we still have to question why, and we still have to use that critical thinking, which I'm pleased to learn, at least locally here, is now being taught in schools of how to look at what you're seeing online and discern whether that's a truthful, legitimate thing. Um, Also, we have this great barometer in our own bodies of what feels right. And sometimes it's just a matter of sitting there and saying, how does that feel in my body? Getting in touch with your body, being present with your own self of when I think about that, how does that make me feel? Oh, actually, I even shrunk back, just like pretend, does it make you shrink back? And then that's not a good thing. If it kind of makes you like move forward, then maybe that's the way to go. That's part of our critical thing. That's that gut reaction that we have, that gut response. So I don't know if that exactly answered your question, but that's sort of what came up as you asked it. So critical thinking and asking those whys and looking at your source and listening to your body.
Excellent. No, that absolutely does answer it. And it's, I refer to it as our internal guidance system, but basically, that's in total alignment with what we've been trying to really share with people, which is you can't listen to all the chatter, or you can't just pick one source and think, oh, they must know what they're talking about. So I appreciate that, because I think a lot of people are looking for answers,
Mm-hmm.
and they may not, again, maybe because they've not been trained. I'm thrilled to hear they're teaching this in school now, because I think that should be the top priority class. But
Yes.
there's too much information and there's too much misinformation. And especially now
Mm-hmm.
when people are trying to decide if they should get a vaccine or not get a vaccine. And again, whichever side of the issue you fall on, doesn't matter. It's that you're going through this process to make sure you're arriving at the best answer possible for you. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And let me just throw in, it also, patience and respect has to come along with that. I'm about to go on a trip with my boyfriend. We're going to be having dinner at someone's house who my boyfriend and I are vaccinated. They are not. They have their reasons why they're not. We're going to their house. And I suddenly had this like feeling of, oh no, like how can we tell them that we don't want to sit inside? And because it just, I'm
Right.
exposed to a lot of clients, I do a lot of traveling, and I know I'm probably protected, but my elderly clients aren't. And so I simply said, hey, well, I know you guys have a great outdoor space. Because we're around so many people, would that be? They're like, oh my God, we'll sit outside, no problem. Da, da, da. It's about respecting the other person's viewpoint and not becoming reactive in that, and not making it this us versus them thing. Just because they have a differing opinion doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means they have a different opinion. We are not our opinions. We are human beings that think this stuff. So not getting judgmental and nasty about people who feel differently or think differently, I think is important too.
No, I totally agree. And I think that, the state we're in right now with all of the divisiveness is because a lot because of that. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, because, I say all the time, none of us knows if we're right or wrong. I
Right.
don't know if we'll ever know, but we certainly don't know in the moment, right? We're just making the best decisions we can. So
Exactly.
let go of all that judgment and just focus on, again, respect, understanding, empathy,
Mm-hmm.
uh, recognizing that you don't know. Like the biggest expert in the world on something still doesn't know everything about it. So I think the idea of being open, and also you mentioned earlier curiosity. So
Yeah.
maybe invoke a little curiosity, like, oh, there's a different perspective in this. It doesn't mean you have to agree. So
Mm-hmm.
I very much agree with that.
Yeah.
All right. So the book is available now, I'm assuming.
It is.
Okay. And if people want to follow your work or check out your videos, or know more about you, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so I'm all over social media, so that's easy. You can go find me there. My website's kathygruver.com. You can find my books there. This is my 8th book, so I'm really excited
Wow.
about that. Speaking videos, things like that. Kathygruver.coach if you want to work with me one-on-one. I love doing life coaching. It's seriously one of my most favorite things. And again, I'm all over social media. You can find all my speaking videos. I do flying trapeze, so there's a bunch of trapeze videos all over the place too. Yeah, so kathygruver.com, kathygruver.coach, and thanks for having me. This has been so fun. You're the first show that I'm actually talking about the book. So you
Oh,
get the
great.
exclusive scoop right now. So that's great.
That's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you joining us, and I'm sure our listeners will really enjoy learning from you. And I thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Thanks for having me.